Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Ben Ferguson with you. It's so nice to have you with us wherever you are listening to us around the country. And Senator, we've got a big show today, including China yet again being accused of not playing by the rules, having a shadow fleet of fishing boats that are not a few, a lot, that are destroying international waters and hurting so many other countries.
Well, on today's podcast, we're going to talk to you about Chinese communists. We're going to talk to you about American communists, and then we're going to talk to you about the Democratic National Committee. And you will notice there is a thread that connects them all. But let's start with the Chi-Coms. Let's start with the Chinese Communist Party. We all know the horrible things they do. We know the murders, the tortures, the concentration camps, the genocide, the lying, the producing COVID virus and causing massive damage to the world and covering it up. All of those are a given. But you know what you maybe didn't know? That China is responsible for one of the greatest ecological disasters across the globe and a systemic theft in the oceans. And it's something that's called illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. IUU is the acronym. Now, the Chinese Communist Party has a distant water fishing fleet. How big do you think their fleet is that does distant water fishing? In other words, not around China. It's not fishing around China. It's fishing on the other side of the world. How big do you think their fleet is?
I mean, 50 ships, 60 ships would be my guess.
It is somewhere between 2,000 vessels
God.
and 16,000 vessels.
Wow.
And they engage.
And by the way, the fact we don't know, as you just mentioned, tells you how big the fleet is.
It is a massive number. It's engaged in theft, but it's illegal fishing at a scale that constitutes ecocide combined with gross human rights violations. And so this is an issue I've been involved with a long time and trying to urge the federal government to use the tools we have to stop this massive illegal fishing. By the way, this illegal fishing, it happens in the Gulf of America. It happens in the Atlantic Ocean. It happens all around Africa. It does massive damages to Africa. It happens in and around South America. It happens in the Indian Ocean. It happens all over the globe. And the consequence of it is subsidized by billions of dollars from the People's Republic of China. Between 2022 and 2024, Chinese illegal fishing accounted for 44% of global fishing. Wow. All over the world, 44%, nearly half.
You just said illegal, so that's outside of their, quote, legal fishing they're doing in and around China.
Yes. Measuring at least 110 million hours of fishing in more than 90 countries. And by the way, not only do they engage in illegal fishing, they also kill hundreds of critically endangered animals, including sharks, whales, dolphins. They've destroyed tens of thousands of acres of coral reefs, and they use forced laborers. So they've got slave labor that they put on the boats. That's who's doing the illegal fishing, are people who are enslaved, and they're subjected to physical abuse, malnutrition, overwork, and withheld pay in many instances for years. And so it is an enormous challenge, and one that I've had real progress fighting, but there's a lot more that we can and need to do.
It's incredible. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the craziness happening with the Democratic Socialists of America 100 days out from the midterms. And also the DNC, Democratic National Committee, they're broke. We're going to have all that for you coming up in a moment. Before we get to that, I want to talk to you a moment about what you can do in simply praying for the people right now that are under attack in Israel. The headlines move on, but the heartache and terror, they do not. Iran and its terrorist proxies are continuing to target Israel, and Hezbollah continues its attacks in the north, forcing families to live under constant threat. Israel is not only defending her people, she is standing on the front lines against terror that literally threatens all of us. Now, even when the news crews leave Israel, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, they remain. Every day, they are on the ground providing life-saving aid And near Israel's border with Lebanon, a Hezbollah drone recently struck the home of Yelena. She was widowed earlier this year, living alone, and she was trapped inside by that blast. Now, thankfully, she was not injured, but she remained displaced. It's hard these days, she said, but I don't want to leave. And honestly, why should she have to leave her home? As Christians, we're called to stand with God's people and pray for those defending Israel and protecting the freedoms we hold dear. I want you to join the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews in praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for the soldiers, the families, and civilians carrying the burden of this fight right now. You can go right now and help and learn who you can pray for by visiting prayifcj.org. That is prayifcj.org. Prayifcj.org. Senator, I want to go back to, you mentioned Africa a moment ago, and this is one of the things that's really come out of this story is when you have a fleet that is this large as the Chinese Communist Party does, and they're all over the world, and they're doing all this illegal fishing 24/7 and using slave labor to do it, they're also destroying the fishing around many people who desperately need it for survival. And when I say survival, I'm talking about life and death. Africa is one of the countries they've targeted off their shoreline, and it's decimating their local fishing, which is survival not only for the food, right? Because that food's not going to Africa when they catch those fish. They're going back to the international market. They're not taking them back to shore like the local fishermen do. But also it's putting countless fishermen out of work.
Yeah, look, it's a huge problem from food supply, especially in Africa, where you have many countries that are struggling, have significant problems with food insecurity and hunger. It also means the jobs of the local African fishermen are imperiled because you have the Chinese stealing their fish. They overfish it, so they destroy the fishing population. So not only are they denying them food and denying them jobs now, but if you responsibly fish, it's a sustainable harvest, and you can keep on fishing and keep on fishing. The Chinese don't give a damn, and they will fish a population out of existence, and they'll just move on. I mean, it's almost like locusts descending and just consuming everything. So they don't engage in responsible fishing. Look, you and I both live in Texas. There are a lot of Texans who are fishermen. There's a big commercial fishing operation in Texas, whether it's shrimpers or red snapper. It's an important part of our economy, but it is understandably and necessarily regulated, because if you overfish a population, it goes away and you destroy the ability to keep going back and fishing it. We have this problem in the Gulf of America with Mexicans, many of whom are funded by the Mexican drug cartels, using illegal lanchas to come up and fish red snapper. And in fact, they fish snapper from the Gulf of America. They do it illegally. They steal it. They take it back down to Mexico. They smuggle it into the United States, and they sell it here and pretend it's domestic caught. And so it is another form of theft. That tends to be more the Mexican drug cartels, where they'll get local Mexican fishermen and literally put a gun to their head and say, okay, go get us some snapper in violation of the laws. The Chinese provide funds for that as well. But look, in and around the United States, we have the Coast Guard, we have our military. We're able to do a pretty good job of guarding our waters. In a continent like Africa, the nations there, their coast guards and navy are just much, much smaller, so they have very limited ability to counteract it. And the same is true around South America, where you see the Chinese taking advantage again. And let me talk about the mechanics of how you fight this, because it's interesting and complicated. Look, normally if you deal with a fleet that is doing something illegal, you would sanction them out of existence. So to run a fleet, you need flagging, you need financing, you need insurance, you need fuel, you need port services, you need customers willing to purchase goods, you need crews, and the crews themselves need food and medical care. So you could impose sanctions on an illegal fleet and shut them down. Now, how does a Chinese fleet get around that? Well, ordinarily, when a ship is out at sea, they keep what's called their AIS, their automatic identification system, turned on. It's essentially the way everyone else can spot them, so that you know if an illegal ship, if the USS Ben Ferguson is out fishing illegally, you can go see the AIS and you can go interdict them. Well, what the Chinese do is they turn their AIS off.
Yeah.
And so you're not able to spot them. And you look at the capacity, 16,000 ships with their AIS off so you can't spot them. And the way they make this operate is they have an elaborate hub and spoke system. So they have fishing vessels that are out fishing. They have their AIS off so you can't see them. But then to make the fleet operate, they have refrigerated reefers that collect the catches at sea and sell them in bulk. And they have to keep their AIS on because the illegal fishing vessels all have to know where to go to drop off their catch. They also have tankers that refuel the fishing vessels. So they have a big tanker, and the illegal fishing vessels will go up, refill, and go back to fish. And on top of that, they have floating bases which provide the crews with their medical care and other services. And so what I have been leading the fight to do is to go after the refrigerated reefers, the tankers, and the floating bases with medical care, because those support vessels can be sanctions. They have to keep their AIS on, or the 16,000 vessels can't figure out where they are. And they're limited in number. So 55 reefers accounted for nearly half of the shipping. 10 tankers represented 61% of all global bunkering activities. And so we have the ability, by targeting those support vessels, to cripple the illegal fishing. Now here's where it gets frustrating. Last year, when we were passing the Working Families Tax Cut, as we talked about in this podcast before, the way a big reconciliation bill works is each committee chairman is responsible for writing the portion of the bill that is within your committee's jurisdiction. So I'm the chairman of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. We have jurisdiction over about 40% of the U.S. economy. That includes the Coast Guard. So I wrote the entire title on the Coast Guard that is within the reconciliation bill. And we ended up providing $20.5 billion in funding for the Coast Guard. That is the single largest investment in the Coast Guard in American history. And it is having massive positive benefits, including we are now bringing ship making back to America. I was at the groundbreaking for Davie Shipbuilding in Galveston, Texas, $1.5 billion, where they're going to build Arctic ice cutters so that we can compete with China and compete with the Russians in the Arctic. We're right now getting our tails whipped. But the funding stream that we put in place for the Coast Guard enables us to sign contracts. By the way, we also had a huge announcement, Ben, just last week. Saronic, which we've talked about before, Saronic is the drone company based in Austin that builds naval drones, that builds drones from little ones to big ones. Remember, we covered on this podcast how Saronic sent drones to rescue the 2 Apache pilots who were shot down over Iran. And also, Saronic drones were used militarily to attack Iranian facilities. Well, Saronic was just in the middle of a big decision about where to build their brand new shipyard. And the choice was Texas or California. And they were going back and forth, back and forth. They have significant facilities in California, too. You will not be surprised to know, number one, I weighed in vigorously on that question. And my views were not subtle or difficult to understand. And I'm very glad to say they made exactly the right choice. So Saronic is building a brand new shipyard in Brownsville, Texas, right on the water. It's $3.5 billion. So all of this shipbuilding is coming to Texas, and it's a direct result of what we did in the Working Families Tax Cut that I was able to write in the funding to provide for this. Well, also as a part of that, I specifically allocated to the Coast Guard $170 million for marine domain awareness. That was to fight this Chinese illegal fishing so that we would know where the reefers are, know where the tankers are, know where the medical ships are. That $170 million would have given the Coast Guard the tools to shut much of this down. Now, this is where the story gets frustrating. We wrote that in law. It was specifically designated to go to marine domain awareness. You know what happened?
What happened? Let me guess. Somebody took it from you.
DHS took the money.
There you go.
and allocated it to the World Cup instead.
And they can do that, right?
No, actually they can't. The law was very clear. They can't do that. They did it, And listen, World Cup security is important. I don't dispute that having security at the World Cup was important, but the law was very clear that that money was designated for marine domain awareness to fight a very real problem of Chinese illegal fishing that is destroying entire fish populations, that is doing massive damage to the environment, that is hurting jobs, and that is continuing completely unabated right now. So, listen, my commitment, I just this week wrote this letter here, joined by 9 other senators, to the Treasury Secretary, calling on the Treasury Secretary to sanction these vessels. And you can actually see in the letter, I identify quite a few of these vessels by name. I give their specifics, and so the known Chinese supply vessels, I lay out where they're flagged, their name, and all their information, and I'm calling on Treasury to sanction them. We're also going to get that $170 million back, and so I'm irritated DHS did that, but we're going to get that money and make sure it goes where it belongs, which is to maritime domain awareness.
Final question on this: I took the boys fishing up, and if you've ever watched the TV show Wicked Tuna, we went to the same port where a lot of those ships come out of. And one of the things that was interesting was the guy that took us out fishing for summer vacation said that the tuna have moved and it's much harder for them to fish compared to what it used to be. Is that possibly because they just said things have changed and there's not as much fish as there used to be? Is part of that because of what we're witnessing? I mean, it's not just Africa that's being affected. It also is the United States of America.
It is the Atlantic and Pacific as well. It absolutely, this is a worldwide problem. You're looking at roughly half of fishing that's occurring in the world is Chinese illegal fishing, and it's doing massive damage. And it's not only illegal, but it's deliberately irresponsible. It's this goes back to the principle. Look, do you know who cares the most about preserving fish population?
I would assume fishermen, because they don't want to be out of a job next year.
Right. And the principle is the same. Like when it comes to conserving wildlife species, hunters are among the most vigorous conservationists. I'm friends with Ted Nugent. Ted lights up my phone, texting all of these stories about, look, hunters want to preserve biodiversity. They want now they like to hunt the animals, but that means, look, if there is a hunting market, there is incentive to preserve and protect the species and grow the population. You actually see this in different African countries. The African countries that have prohibited safari hunting, they end up having their populations dwindle mightily because there's no economic value in preserving the species. Whereas those African countries that allow safari hunting, that they regulate it, they sell, you've got to buy a tag to hunt a particular species, suddenly that species has economic value, and so the park or preserve where they are, they invest real money in stopping poachers and protecting the animals, and you see the population grow. It's a basic principle that if you have a property rights system that allocates value to something, then there's an incentive to protect it. If nobody has value on something, then you end up having what the Chinese are doing, which is just they would fish it till there were no more fish in the world, and they just don't give a damn.
And then they would move on to something else. Like they wouldn't care. They don't care if they extinct tuna or any other fish. They just say move on next. What can we do? What can we destroy and capture now for our personal gain? It is incredible.
And by the way, these are the same fishermen that also do shark finning, which is a particularly grotesque process where you catch a shark and you pull it up and you just cut the fin, the dorsal fin off. And in Chinese cuisine, that's considered a delicacy. I think it's supposed to be an aphrodisiac and have all sorts of medicinal qualities. But they cut the fin off and then throw the shark back, and the shark dies. Like without the fin, the shark bleeds and dies. And they don't care about how many animals they kill.
Same with whaling. They have no problem with whaling.
Yes.
Illegal
they
whaling is huge for China.
It is a massive problem, and so I am fighting hard to end it because it's the responsible thing to do from the environment, from preserving wildlife populations, from jobs, and from food security across the globe.
Yeah, it's a great point. We're going to keep you updated on the story because it's an important one. I want to move. We are 100 days out from the midterms, and if you thought the Democratic Party was going to make a course correction with the Democratic Socialists of America, you would be wrong. We are now witnessing this midterm election center. The best way I can describe it It is a Democratic Socialist midterm, and the Democratic Party is a part of it. They are involved in it, but they're not calling the shots at this point. It is the Democratic Socialists and the candidates. That is the midterms.
Yeah, here, listen to left-wing journalist Steve Kornacki describe the current state of affairs.
We've been seeing it in the primary season. Socialists winning Democratic primaries, candidates from the far left. And look at this here. Among Democrats, this is that Fox poll, a majority have a favorable view of socialism. Step outside the Democratic Party, it's a totally different world. Look at independence, socialism, deeply unpopular there.
This is interesting. Views of socialism, Democrats, 52% favorable, 43% unfavorable. It's what you and I have been saying for a long time. I think the Democratic Party is dead. I think it is Marxist, socialists, and communists. They use the word Democrat to not scare too many people off. But this midterm is absolutely this agenda.
Well, and that clip, if you guys are not watching the video on YouTube, you will not have seen it. But the more general polling for the American people on socialism, 77% unpopular, 13% favorable. So among normal people, that includes Republicans and independents, they're like, no, we don't want socialism. And let's be clear, even socialism is a euphemism. These people are Marxists. They are outright communists. I want you to listen right now to the co-chair of the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, explaining their radical agenda. Give a listen to the DSA co-chair.
So we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform. And I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that is part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
You listen to that, and I got to give them credit. I love when people in politics don't lie. It's very refreshing. This is who they are. When they tell you who they are, Senator, believe them. They're not lying to you.
Look, these are people that want to rip the Constitution to shreds. They want to abolish the presidency. They want to abolish the Senate. They want to abolish the Supreme Court. So there's nothing protecting your rights. You have no rights in their world. Understand, abolishing the Supreme Court, that means they can do anything you want, and you don't have free speech, you don't have religious liberty, you don't have a Second Amendment. The government is in charge of everything. That's what they believe. Now, they also want to abolish the Pentagon, so we have no military. We're unable to defend ourselves. That means the Chinese and the Russians and Hamas and Hezbollah and every terrorist on earth can run all over us, and we have no military. We can't defend ourselves. They want to abolish ICE. So we're not able to enforce our borders, which is okay because they want to abolish borders. They want to say anyone on planet Earth who wants to come to America can come to America. They want to grant amnesty and American citizenship to every illegal person here, so that every left-wing radical, everyone who's broken the law, every human trafficker, every gang member, all of them are the people who vote. And they want to close down prisons. So they want murderers and rapists and child molesters living right next to you. And mind you, there are no police because they've abolished the police. So let all the murderers go and eliminate the police. And then to be clear, this is why I said these people are communists. They also, Shannon, I'll give her credit. She asked, do you want the federal government to own most big companies in America? She said yes. So whatever company you work for, guess what? You just become a federal government employee because the government seizes all of the companies. Now, these young people are too ignorant to know that what they're proposing has been implemented. It has been implemented in the Soviet Union. It's been implemented in Cambodia. It's been implemented in Vietnam. It's been implemented in Cuba. It's been implemented in North Korea. It's been implemented, although with a twist, in China. And every place it's been implemented, it's been an absolute disaster. It doesn't work. And here's what happens. You have massive human rights abuses.
Yep.
You have people imprisoned, tortured, murdered. You have genocide. You have concentration camps. Right now, the Chinese communists have concentration camps with over 1 million Uyghurs, over 1 million people held in concentration camps right now. The DSA wants to turn America into the equivalent of China, the same sort of government. And when it comes to, look, they don't know or they don't care because it is all about power. And by the way, you know what? These DSA guys, just like, you know, the Black Lives Matter, who are also a Marxist organization, a communist organization, they raise lots of money, many of them from useful idiots on the left and in big companies that wrote checks. We had a bunch of giant American companies that wrote checks to Black Lives Matter, who then used to try to destroy the capitalist system and moves us towards a Marxist system where the government takes over their companies. But you know what? The people running DSA or Black Lives Matter, they tend to live in multi-million-dollar mansions. They're stealing the money like blind. And I'll give them credit for that. In this, they are real communists because that's the same thing Putin does. That's the same thing Xi does. That's the same thing Castro does. That's the same thing Kim Jong-un does. Look, in communism, you have billionaires. Yeah. The only billionaires, though, are the ones with the machine guns that are robbing the people. And actually, there's a reason we connected these two stories. Ask yourself, how does the Chinese illegal fishing fleet behave? Do they demonstrate any responsibility? Do they demonstrate any concern about the environment? Do they demonstrate any concern about people who need jobs, about people who are hungry, about people who'd like a living? Or do they act purely as rapacious thieves? And I think that tells you where these radicals want the Democrat Party to go and where they want America to go.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to know how much the Democratic Socialists of America have a hold right now on the Democratic Party, this is abnormal. Going into a midterm, so people understand, usually the party that is out of power, the people that support them, whether you're Republican or Democrat, if you're in the minority, you usually have a lot of fundraising because then you say, okay, now my ideals are under threat. I'm no longer taking them for granted. This other side has got power. We want to get it back. And usually you have a surge in fundraising. It is typical to see the party out of power have a great amount of cash come in once their ideals, what they believe in, are under attack. The Democratic National Committee does not have the money. In fact, we're now being told that going into the midterms, they're in essence completely broke.
Well, that's right, and our source for that is admittedly a very right-wing outlet, so you've got to take what they say with a grain of salt, and that would, of course, be the New York Times. And the New York Times, I want to read from the beginning of the article. Inside the phone-throwing drama at the troubled, broke Democratic Party. The Democrats should be well-positioned to make gains in this year's midterms. But inside party headquarters every week brings paranoia, worries about money, and, on occasion, emotional eruptions. The Democratic Party is so short on cash that leaders at its headquarters have undertaken a new gambit to mask the severity of problems, asking vendors not to send bills until after the midterm elections. The bookkeeping maneuver, which was described by 3 people briefed on it, is the latest sign of financial duress for the DNC, and its embattled leader as money troubles threaten to undercut Democratic momentum with 100 days until the midterms. And to give you a sense of the money differential directly, here's what the New York Times says. The Democratic Party and its allies are far beyond Republicans when it comes to money. Mr. Trump controls a $400 million super PAC, and the Republican National Committee is sitting on nearly $130 million. Where's the DNC? $2 million in debt.
Wow.
When you have the New York Times saying, what in the hell is going on with you people? It goes on to say, trusted Mr. Martin, the head of the DNC, was sapped by his handling of a long-promised autopsy of the 2024 election. Late last year, he said he would not release the document, but then as criticism mounted, he released an incomplete draft that featured searing annotations from the DNC that undermined the report. Now, Mr. Martin is both paralyzed by the idea of leaks and surrounded by them. During a May meeting with the full staff of the DNC, days after the draft autopsy's release, he admitted that times were tough, and he chided his team for revealing to reporters what was happening inside party headquarters. Quote, "It pisses me off when I see leaks out of this building. No more." Mr. Martin said he saw a lot of down faces and people hanging their heads. Keep your heads up. Keep a smile on. My success is your success. So the weaker I am, the weaker all of you are. Well, What kind of manager is this fella? Let me tell you. Well, this is clearly someone who knows how to watch his pennies. Here's another quote from the New York Times article. The single biggest expense of the Martin era. What do you think that was, Ben?
I'm going to go with private jets just because I know how much they love those private jets, the DNC.
I have every certainty the private jet bill is massive, but that was not the single biggest expenditure. The single biggest expenditure was $7.3 million to buy the remnants of Kamala Harris's campaign list from her failed 2024 bid. Ms. Harris' Political Action Committee then used that money to cover additional remaining debts. So that's his biggest expenditure, is bailing out Kamala Harris's bankrupt campaign rather than actually trying to win elections going forward. And here's a little more about his very gentle, experienced management style. Another paragraph from the New York Times. Mr. Martin's fraying nerves are showing. In a peak of frustration in early July, he threw his phone at the desk of a junior aide while upbraiding the person. The phone tossing incident resulted in a formal complaint to the DNC's Human Resources Department. The fallout from the phone throwing episode was described by half a dozen people familiar with the incident, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss internal party matters. None of them witnessed the account, and there was some dispute over how aggressively the phone was tossed. Mr. Martin was said to have thrown the phone at the desk rather than the aide.
Oh, there you go. That makes it better.
There you go. You know what? Somehow I've managed to live 55 years on planet Earth, to work in a bunch of different offices, to work with a lot of people, to have a lot of people working for me. I've magically managed to refrain from throwing a phone at anybody. I got to say, at any desk. I've got to say it hasn't been difficult. I think the only thing I've ever thrown at anyone who works for me is I have thrown a Nerf basketball. So if that counts, I'll plead guilty to that. But when it comes to like not throwing hard metal objects at your employees, that does not take massive restraint.
Yeah, no, I guess it doesn't. It doesn't boost morale. It's incredible. That is the Democratic Party heading into midterms.
Although I do need to come clean. Although I haven't thrown anything at one young Benjamin.
This is true. You have broken bones.
I have in fact broken his finger. So maybe it's
still
even
crooked, folks. There it is. You see the crookedness there, folks. You see. I just want everybody watching to see that is not straight anymore. That is a Ted Cruz broken bone right there. I just want to be clear about that.
Look, it's important to acknowledge that you have this, big strapping Division I college athlete, this like Studley. And if you don't know how Studley he is, give Ben a minute. He'll tell you how Studley he is. He's very proud of being a Division I college athlete. And he's playing hoops with little old me, a college debater. And I'm just saying the consequence of playing hoops is bones are broken. And
when you're losing, Ted doesn't play fair. That's what I learned from that. When you're losing, Ted doesn't play fair. And this is what happens. It's crooked for life.
So you're admitting to our listeners that not only did your finger get broken, but you also lost. That's good.
No.
I'm glad you were on the record.
Losing.
I don't think so. No,
when the finger was broken.
No. I think
by the way, do you want to know
the finger lies.
Do you want to know what I keep on my desk? This is a true story. So we were in Austin. We were playing the game. This is the remnants of the tape that is still left that I used to tape said finger together, the crooked finger right there, and keep playing an entire another game. So I kept it as that's romantic.
Well, Ben, just don't ever say I never gave you anything.
There you go. I like it. Don't forget we do this show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hit that subscribe or auto download button in the center, and I will see you back here in a couple of days.